For this problem, we want to solve the equation sine of x equals negative 0.32. In this case, as always, what we're trying to do is solve for x. Right now, the x is caught inside of a trig function, and so we're going to need to get it out of the trig function. Right now, the sine function is by itself, so we can kind of at this point go ahead and use the inverse sine function in order to undo what's going on here. Negative 0.32 is not one of our standard values over here from the unit circle, so we're going to have to use the inverse sine function on our calculator in order to build the solutions for this particular problem. So let's go ahead and take the inverse sine of negative 0.32 on our calculator. So again, make sure that your calculator is in radians, and then we can hit second sine. And we want to find negative 0.32. So there's our negative button, 0.32. Oops, missed the decimal there. Negative 0.32, and hit enter. And here we get that our inverse sine is negative 0.3257 radians. So let's go ahead and put that answer in over here. Negative 0.3257 is the value that we get when we take the inverse sine of negative 0.32. Now, notice up here when we talk about recording our answers, we're looking for all the solutions of x that lie between 0 and 2 pi. And what we found when we take the inverse sine is we've gotten a negative answer, so this isn't even a valid solution for our value of x. And this is often going to happen when you're taking the inverse sine of a negative number, because what we're going to do is we're going to be getting values here in the fourth quadrant, and we record that as between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2, because that's the domain, or the range rather, of the inverse sine function. So the calculator is giving you a very limited value, and it's always going to be reporting it like this. So the easiest way that you can get, again, we want our answers kind of on this primary unit circle between 0 and 2 pi. So anytime that you have one answer, we can always find a coterminal value by adding or subtracting 2 pi. In this case, we can take, because we're negative, we want to add 2 pi to end up getting positive. And so within the unit circle, we can get our first value by taking that negative 0.3257 and adding 2 pi. And that'll give us our value within the full unit circle. Now, that's not a value I know very well, so let's go ahead and do that on our calculator here. We want to add, just take what our last answer is there, and we want to add 2 pi. So there's 2, my pi button's over there on the second function. And so I get 5.9, we'll just do 5.96 radians. So that's going to give us one solution. It's going to be in the fourth quadrant, somewhere over here. And that's going to give us 5.96 radians, or which was negative 0.3257 radians there. So those are our equivalent sorts of answers. Now, to some degree, knowing what this negative answer is here, notice what we've done is we've gotten a fourth quadrant answer, which is where my sine value is negative. The sine is also negative in the third quadrant and the fourth quadrant. So the sine is negative in both of these because that's where y values are negative. Using the coterminal angles, we found the equivalent fourth quadrant value, but now I've got to find the quadrant, or the third quadrant solution for my unit circle. So this is where you use that little butterfly effect. So we're looking above and below the x-axis. Since we want something in the third quadrant, we want something down here. So I've got to find something that's symmetrical along this way. Notice it was negative 0.3257 radians down this way. So it's also going to be 0.3257 radians down this way, farther down. So in that case, where pi, we want to go another 0.3257. So we can get our other solution here by taking pi plus 0.3257. So we get the pi, we bring this little bit over here to get that symmetry. Again, we can do this over on our calculator, pi plus 0.3257. And we get 3.47 radians as our second solution. Whoops. And so what we found here, this is my third quadrant answer where my sign is negative. This is my fourth quadrant answer where my sign is also negative. And so those correlate with getting a negative value here. And I was only interested in values between 0 and 2 pi. Since we were just looking at the sine of x, that has a period of 2 pi. So we just get our two solutions within that single period. And that's all there is. So that would solve that particular problem.